second wave of migration. So we have 55 banks already in production that work every day and every morning using the Spunta DLT application. The next wave would be at the end of September with the rest of the Italian banking sector. So we are quite working on this. Probably we will have 100 more banks.
Wow.
By the end of September. So we will have 100 more banks.
Wow.
By the end of 100 more banks.
Wow.
By the end of September. So okay, we started working to the Spunta 2.5 years ago with the idea to experiment the technology, to let the Italian banks better know the technology hands-on. So experimenting if it would have been possible to have a real process working in a DLT world. And we started from Spunta that was a very small and niche process that doesn't involve transactions, doesn't involve the final clients. It's just an interbank reconciliation process that works at a book level. So it was safe enough to experiment using this process. At the same time, the Italian Banking Association is a sort of a regulator for this process. So the process is ruled by an interbank agreement that dates back 1978. So we were able to bring the entire Italian banking sector into the new world, pushing the red button, issuing the new interbank agreement. So we moved from an interbank agreement that talks about mechanographical exchange of data using tapes, etc., into the new one that talk about distributed ledger.
Yeah.
So it's a big shift, a very big shift. But we worked during this time not only with the innovation and the IT people, but also with the final operator of Spunta. So the people that every day works in the back office of the bank, reconciliating the movement. So they were, they do need a change in their process because they were suffering some burdensome activities, some too complex bureaucratical steps. And I remember the first time when we showed them the first POC, the first test of the application, they opened the dashboard and they found in a single window all the balance of all the bilateral accounts they have with counterparties. And for them was, wow, like the Christmas tree for my children, you know. It was so difficult previously to get this information. They need to call each counterparties or to send an email or even a fax. It depends from the single bank you was talking with.
Yeah.
And at a glance, boom, all the information was there and there was confirmed because what you see is what they see.
Yeah.
So the bilateral account really becomes to be our account, not only my account whenever I have the ownership of the account and your account when the ownership switches to the other bank.
Yeah. So sharing the information is like is that the big driver here with blockchain, just so everyone has that information, or is there other parts of using blockchain that's beneficial for you guys?
Of course, transparency is one of the most evident benefits in this process, but also we had a big benefit in reducing operational risks because the policies in managing risks was under the rule of the banks that own the account. So again, whenever the ownership of the account is yours, your rules dominate the account. And when the ownership switches to me, I decide which kind of risk I want to take and which kind of movements I want to investigate to understand what happens. So for the first time, we know how the account is managed, which rules are followed in the automatic matching, and those rules are documented, are common for both, and we are sure that those rules are executed on the ledger.
Wow, very cool. So not to really throw up Corda, but why Corda Enterprise? Why'd you pick Corda out of the different blockchain platforms?
When we chose Corda, I think it was the first time I had Katerina in a call from the other side. We had a long list of 30 or 35 questions we investigated with R3 and with other different platforms. It wasn't Corda Enterprise, it was Corda open source version 0.9, I think, at that time.
Oh, wow.
So we had many benefits. The natural benefit was that the bilateral accounts are bilateral channels.
Yeah.
Immediately. So this was the first reason that let us start thinking to Corda. The second one, for us, it's quite important to match some specific needs that comes from the banking industry. So the possibility that we hope to implement next year to archive information, the possibility we had to manage also some privacy requirements we have if just in case some personal information goes into into the movements into the bilateral accounts.
Yeah.
And another very, very important thing was that we were able to speak with R3. When we had those lists of questions, it was possible to speak with you directly, to pose our questions, to ask what was planned in the future, to receive information. And during those 2 years, this constant dialogue, this constant collaboration was part of our success, was very, very important.
Nice, Katerina. It must be your charm.
I have to say, it was not my secret charm. Let me tell you, I remember it was not my secret charm, I'm telling you. I remember specifically when we got those questions, it was very early on for us as an organization in terms of how we approached every opportunities, every client that came our way. And I remember when we got those questions, we had less than a week to get. It was less than a week, and I remember that specifically. So there were loads of people within the organization, and we were small enough. We're still small enough to do it now as well, but even then we were small enough to actually gather, identify how important that opportunity was for us because of the potential that it had. To actually gather together and respond very quickly to those questions. However, though, I remember the first call that we had with Silvia. It was myself, and it was with Brian as well, Brian McNulty, who had at the time a very strong Glaswegian accent.
Hard to understand.
So I had to translate some of the answers in my very, 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 Greek accent, let's say, to be understood by Silvia.
Brian just confused everyone with his accent.
But we were so happy though when they selected us, because it has been one of the, I think what Silvia said, the constant dialogue that we had, not only between R3 and Silvia, but the other collaborators in this in this project, SIA and Entity Data as well. And obviously Silvia talking with the rest of the banking sector, right? Which is something that we never saw. It was just Silvia dealing with the banks, and she can tell you some pretty good anecdotes about their first meeting and how long they took to decide on just one color of a tab. I remember Silvia said, or something.
Something like that. But we put in the very first meetings also a learning session for the banks about blockchain, about DLT, and about Corda. So we put 50 people, I think, from around 12 to 14 banks in a single room, because we was only working with IT people, but also with back office people. So they are completely aware on the Sputna process, on the Nostro and Bostro movement, Nostro and Bostro accounts, etc. And they are absolutely a master in that. But for them to understand that when you write a transaction, this becomes immutable. They say, in which sense? Are you saying immutable? Is this not possible? We mute every time, every transaction we change, we match, we unmatch, and rematch, and re-unmatch, etc. So we start, I remember, with Ivan sharing all his information and trying to simplify and simplify and simplify, because we cannot, we needed the banks to understand at several levels what we were doing. So we cannot have just a specialist, a super expert in the bank understanding what we were working on, but we need them to understand deeply what we were doing, and also for the back office people, but also for the C-level, because each bank decided and formally approved the participation and the migration into production for this project. And this was a complex decision that involved the CEOs of the banks. Yeah,
I feel like people, I mean, you guys were getting involved so like 2 years ago in this space, I feel like is so long ago. So those initial meetings must have been pretty difficult, getting people and like the banks specifically on board to exploring this technology, right?
Right, we started from the process. So we started going in each of the 14 banks. In 2 weeks, we visit 14 banks.
Oh gosh.
To going deeper into the process and understanding the as-is situations, to understand how to transform it. And then we had the first meetings, but it was very useful to develop the front end of the application in parallel with the Corda app, because they needed to see what we was developing. And we had, for example, a meeting using red and green palette, because we need them to vote, and to vote quickly. We could not spend an entire meeting talking about the red and the green table and the green colors of the front end, which is of course very important, but we needed to decide a lot of things. So we gave this red and green palette to the banks, and they voted and voted and took, I don't know, maybe 25 decisions in a single meeting, because we need to accelerate.
Wow, that's such a funny way to make the banks collaborate and make a decision.
Yeah, make a decision together, because we tried for all the project to keep the governance distributed.
Yeah. So, Silvia, what are the next steps for Sputna?
Now we are at the end of the second wave of migration. So we have 55 banks already in production that work every day and every morning using the Sputna DLT application. The next wave would be at the end of September with the rest of the Italian banking sector. So we are quite working on this. Probably we will have 100 more banks.
Wow.
By the end of September. So it's not so easy. But at the same time, we received a lot of requests for information, for more details, and for going deeper into the project from several non-Italian banks. So we'd really like to expand the area of the Sputna project also to the reconciliation between Italian banks and non-Italian banks. And for doing this, we'd like to continue with our distributed approach. So we'd like to start working with those banks, having them around the table, digital or physical, that it would be. But we'd like to work with them to build the foreign spunta, let me say.
Yeah, that's a lot. Do you find that, so coronavirus has not impacted the way you guys are working, right? Or in a negative way, at least?
So no, it didn't impact, luckily, because we were so close to migrate, and so it wasn't not possible to stop everything. So the first and the second wave didn't have effect.
Yeah.
And now we hope we will have enough time to work for the third and last wave.
Yeah, you guys have been kind of at this for a while. In the blockchain world, you've been at it for like decades, I feel like. But it is interesting because I've talked to some startups, because startups, it's really hard right now. I think coronavirus is obviously really impacting them with getting like fundraising and stuff so they can get their products off the ground. But also some startups are doing really well because now coronavirus is kind of forcing everyone to go into this digital world when you could have been like, we don't really need it. And now you're realizing like everything needs to be digital. So Katerina, how has your job kind of been impacted by coronavirus? Do you find that there are a lot of more people who are super interested in learning more or are more engaged now? Because being the customer success manager at R3, I'm sure you have a lot on right now.
Yeah, it's different, I should say. It really depends what you are, in which area, what kind of client you are, and which area you're looking at. So, for example, yes, we have seen, as you say, some of the startups that they are dealing with manual-driven processes where communications are not great in between. We've seen an acceleration of that. And also we have seen areas, for example, like CBDC, central bank digital currency, that has had a massive, tremendous, so much interest just out of the sudden, as if everybody woke up. Honestly, we've been talking about CBDC for at least 2 years as well, but everybody now discovered in this new light, or because of what's happening with coronavirus, and they're just looking at the possibility, a real possibility for solutions like that to be implemented. Now, of course, you have also on the other side, you have clients which are banks, and they're taking a more conservative approach as well. So I'm not going to say that everything is rosy because of coronavirus, that is going to turn into digital, because it's not. Overall, I think it will just reassess the way that we do we work, from whether or not you're a bank or an ISV or insurance company, everything. And there will be stuff that will definitely change. Not everybody will change, because as client, as you said, client success manager, I have seen it that not all the clients are the same, and even not all clients have got the same, let's say, appetite for innovation. Even if it's pushed down the throat, they still resist it, to be honest. But and that's why, it will be very interesting where we come out of it. But one thing to say as well about the Spunta success here, this was the really why I think that the success of Spunta was so why Spunta was a success, because it was actually driven at a association level. So a lot of the hard work, let's say, Silvia had to do, but she had the power to do it, right? Because it was something that could be presented in a very democratic way, the way she did it, obviously, and the way the association approached the issue. But nevertheless, it's the association that, if there is a decision taken and can be, then you have to follow it. Actually, right? So,
Yeah, I think you guys have had like a constant stream, I feel like, of really good news of like really making a lot of progress within the last